Hey there, I'm in Regensburg, 1.5 hours away from Munich. Behind me is the Porta Praetoria. It was built, it was the entrance to the Roman castle that once stood here in the year 179. And, well, Regensburg is a very old town and there's a lot to see here, and it's UNESCO World Heritage. And so it's halfway on the way to Prague, so maybe make a stop here, and why it's worth to making a stop and even maybe staying a night here, I will show you. Or have a day trip from Munich, like I said, 1.5 hours. So enjoy this video. Okay, halfway was perhaps a slight exaggeration. It's still 4 hours from here to Prague. But I came here on the regional train that ends in Prague. If you buy a Bayern ticket, it costs just 34 euros plus 10 euros for each additional person. And you can use it to travel on all public transport all day long in Bavaria. Regensburg was founded in 175 as a Roman legion camp under Emperor Marcus Aurelius under the name Castra Regina to protect the empire from the barbarians north of the Danube. Traces of Roman settlement can still be found here in Regensburg today. Shortly after the train station, in the direction of the old town, you will find the remains of the old fortifications on the right-hand side. The front part of the wall is a medieval wall. The rear wall, with its large stone blocks, is the Roman camp wall. You can also see repairs to the Roman wall from medieval times. These are easy to spot because of the much smaller stones. It is interesting to see how construction techniques have changed. As a border town on the Limes, Regensburg has been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But Regensburg had already been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site due to its medieval old town, which is considered one of the best preserved old towns in Germany. Regensburg was relatively spared from bombing raids during World War II, which is why it now holds 2 titles. This makes it one of a very small group of cities worldwide that hold multiple UNESCO World Heritage Site titles. Anyone who thinks Munich has a lot of churches hasn't seen Regensburg. It feels like every other building in Regensburg is a church. However, I will limit myself to just a few in this video. If you walk straight down Maximilianstraße from the train station, you will come to the Basilica of Nativity of Our Lady, also known as the Old Chapel. It is the oldest church in the city, and according to legend, even the oldest church in Bavaria. In Roman times, a temple to Juno stood here. But if you only judge the church from the outside, you will miss the best part. The interior is a fireworks display of Rococo. In the 18th century, the church was given its current appearance. It is considered one of the most important Rococo churches in Bavaria. And it is for sure one of the most beautiful. After visiting this hidden gem, I head to the cathedral. Over the centuries, Regensburg's St. Peter's Cathedral has surpassed the old chapel in importance. Today, it is considered the most significant Gothic cathedral in Germany alongside Cologne Cathedral. A Romanesque cathedral once stood here, at least part of which has survived, known as the Eselturm, Donkey Tower. For a long time the cathedral appeared black due to air pollution. After renovations and cleaning work, the white limestone of yesteryear has reappeared. The facade is richly decorated. The main portal in particular is a lavishly decorated portal with figures. The interior was stripped of all its Baroque splendor in the 19th century. Today it once again appears in its sober Gothic style. The stained glass windows in the cathedral are considered to be the most extensive collection of medieval stained glass windows in the German-speaking world. The silver altar, on the other hand, has only existed in its entirety for around 100 years. Also, most of its individual parts date from the 18th century. There is also a cathedral treasure that can be visited, but the exhibition is currently being remodeled. Only this beautiful silver axe was on display in the cathedral. After a quick stop at the Porta Praetoria, the former northern gate of the Roman camp, where I filmed my intro, I was overcome by hunger. On the banks of the Danube, I was greeted by the smell of sausages and charcoal grills. This is where the historische Wurstkuchel, the oldest sausage stand in the world, is located. Sausages have been distributed to the common people here since 1135. Of course, I needed my portion of sausages too. Traditionally, the small bratwursts are served on sauerkraut with mustard in a rye wheat roll. Very tasty. The Wurstkuchel is located at the stone bridge. Alongside the cathedral, it is considered Regensburg's most important building. It was built here between 1135 and 1146 and was long the only bridge across the Danube between Ulm and Vienna. In the Middle Ages, it was considered an architectural marvel and served as a model for the Charles Bridge in Prague. Emperor Frederick Barbarossa set out on his third crusade from here. Of the three bridge towers that once stood here, only the southernmost one remains today. It houses the Bridge Tower Museum, but it was closed, like all museums, because I was there on a Monday. If you want to see Regensburg's museums, it's better to come on another day, but the city itself is the attraction. On the bridge stands the figure of the Brückenmännlein, bridgeman. He faces south. According to legend, there was a race between the construction of the cathedral and the bridge in the Middle Ages. The little man is the bridge builder who checks on the progress of the cathedral construction. On the other side of the stone bridge is the hospital district. In the Middle Ages, pilgrims, the poor and the sick were cared for here. Today it is home to the Spitalbrauerei brewery. In summer there is a beautiful beer garden on the banks of the Danube. Not now in winter, of course, just imagine it in summer with lots of people. But I headed back to the other side towards the old town. In general, the city was very quiet, but I'm filming in January. In summer, during the high season, there's more going on here, but even then, Regensburg is by no means as crowded as Salzburg, Prague or Munich. I then arrived in front of the old town hall. Since 1663, the old town hall was being venue for the perpetual imperial diet, the parliament of the princes of the Holy Roman Empire, who discussed matters of war and peace here. They met here until 1806, when the empire was dissolved by Napoleon. The town hall can be visited on a guided tour, which can be booked at the tourist information office around the corner. I then walked further south and left the old town. When I arrived at Bismarckplatz, I saw a completely different side of the city. Here there are mainly classicistic facades, such as the theater. The square was laid out in 1804 after the city walls were demolished. Although it's not a part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, that does not mean that it does not have its own charm. The former Benedictine monastery of St.Emmeram is located west of the train station. It was founded here in the 7th century. The core of the basilica dates back to 780. Upon entering the basilica, visitors are once again greeted by the Baroque splendor of the Asam brothers. Cosmas Damian and Igit Quirin Asam refurbished the church between 1731 and 1733, at least the central nave. The west transept speaks a completely different stylistic language. Here, the ceiling paneling is in early Baroque style, inspired by the Renaissance. As is often the case in Baroque architecture, there is much to discover. Stone skeletons and real skeletons wrapped in silk. The monastery itself was dissolved in 1803. From then on, it became the princely residence of the Thurn und Taxis family, one of the wealthiest noble families in Germany. The castle still belongs to the family today and is the largest privately owned castle. Some rooms can be visited on Saturdays and Sundays with guided tours of the castle. The Princely Treasury and Marstall Museum, Royal Stables Museum, can also be visited at least from March onwards. To briefly mention some other important museums in Regensburg, there is also the Danube Shipping Museum, the Historical Museum, and the House of Bavarian History. All of them were closed when I was there, a good reason to shoot a Regensburg video part 2. I then made it way back to the train station along the Palace Park. The palace grounds themselves are not open to the public, except for special events. Anyway, that was my day in Regensburg. Make a stop here on your way to Prague, or from Prague on your way to Munich, to UNESCO World Heritage Sites, architecture from all stylistic periods, one of the best preserved medieval cities, the oldest sausage stand in the world, and yet still a hidden gem among international tourists. If that doesn't convince you, then I don't know what will. And I think I'll put together a tour based on this. So if you want a guided tour of Regensburg, Munich, or other places in the area, here's my website and email address. See you in the next video, Philip.